Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Representative Ken deGraaf, one of Colorado's Liberty leaders in the state legislature. Well, Representative deGraaf, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, Brandon. It's always good to see you.
Well, here we go again. For the third year in a row, Governor Jared Polis has called a special session for the General Assembly. This year, the legislature is tasked with addressing the nearly $1 billion tax cut that businesses and individual taxpayers are benefiting from. But of course, this tax cut has also created a revenue shortfall for the state government. So let's start with the basics. Representative deGraaf, what do Coloradans need to know about the special session?
Well, first of all, Brandon, it's not special. This is, I think, the third year in a row. So I'd call this categorize this as barely special. And of course, barely special is BS. So this is just another BS session of the Colorado General Assembly. What I would say is going to be another rubber stamp of palooza. It's just going to be Democrats. They gave us what, about 48 hours to come up with bill titles that would fit inside the uh, the framework that they have in order for to save 1.2 billion dollars of money that's being retained into the economy, which of course makes the Democrats very sad. Anytime money is retained in the economy, that just raises their hackles. And the idea of revenue, the state taxes don't raise revenue. I mean, I know we call it revenue, and you call it the Internal Revenue Service, and it's money that's coming in, but that's just tax extractions. It's not it's not money coming from creating anything. It's not a free market. Of course, that's something that they would agree with Marx as being the worst of all freedoms, the free market. But it's not an exchange of good for good. We're not taking this $1.2 billion and exchanging it and giving it to the government for something good. The taxpayers are having this extracted or tax extracted by force, and they are getting ideology in return. They're actually, I think they're largely getting harm from their government, not just wasteful spending, but just actual harm. So, one thing I've noted, and what I'd really love to see is the gallery be a little bit more used, other than by tour groups who have a passing interest, because I think I know it's not a mistake in how that's made, that the gallery, the Capitol is put together. The gallery is on the top. I mean, it's not the top floor, but as far as the government functions, the gallery is above. That's for the citizens to be in, apply oversight so that they can see, because the citizens are actually the only ones with rights. The government doesn't have rights. And then below that, you have the legislature, and those in the legislature should be representatives representing the rights, securing the rights of the citizens. And then below that, so in a sense, the lowest office in the land would be the governor and the executive. And we have this inverted notion that somehow the governor is above all. But I think the citizens need to regain their primacy in this, and come out and sit in the gallery, cycle through and watch how this is made. Watch how, make the legislators feel like they actually need to pay attention. Make sure that they are, because usually what will happen is, they won't even be in. They're not going to represent their bill. So, anyways, those are just a couple things. Again, it's not a special session. It's something I call it's extraordinary. They want to call it extraordinary. I think it's just extraordinary. It's just more of the same. When you talk to them, I have not heard any plans by Democrats that would actually cut the budget, because they feel that everything that they spend on their ideology, whether that's unlimited, really paying global feticide for anybody in the world to come to Colorado for for that. And of course, that violates the first of our self-evident creator endowed rights of life. And then also the trans surgeries. We're talking about, they're not there's no, they had to they had to craft their session as tightly as possible to make sure that actually no, that there's going to be as few possible money saving items as possible, because they're not interested in saving money. And I've said this on X, but I think the at some point the purpose of some of this spending is taxation, because taxation is compelled labor, and compelled labor is slavery. And it doesn't really matter how inefficient, how ineffective, or how detrimental the program is. They're going to spend the money, and the only penalty for failure is more money. So yeah. So anyways, those are sorry, it was a little bit of tangents perhaps, but yeah, the state doesn't bring in revenue. The state's not missing revenue. The state is bringing in billions and billions of dollars. We've taken a budget surplus and we've squandered it. The regime of Jared Polis and his Policites have just squandered our Coloradans' money at all turns, and are chasing away business, and are chasing away families, and are chasing away. Really, it's kind of the rewilding of Colorado, which is just the depeopling of Colorado. So it appears they want to have Colorado have as few people as possible, and and I guess as many data centers as possible. I don't know.
Oh, those are great points. No, I really appreciate the perspective that you bring to our state government, because we hear so much from the Democratic majority and their compliant media to present things in such a way that, oh my gosh, the world is ending. We're in a horrible situation. All this money, we see McCluskey and others crying on crying on social media about how horrible this is, that they don't have the kind of money. But in reality, it's a 2 to 3% budget cut, and that's not much when you really consider all the billions and billions they're bringing in, like you mentioned. And then you brought up how they spend so much money on their little special interest programs, their social programs, whether it's, now we have taxpayer funded abortions, an absolute travesty here in Colorado, taxpayer funded trans surgeries, like you mentioned, of course, all the benefits for illegal aliens. I mean, all of these ridiculous programs that do not truly serve the people of Colorado, and are not proper function of Colorado. I mean, I have to think that if they just cut that out of the budget, we'd have everything they need in terms of the cuts they need. But of course, the Democratic majority doesn't think that way, do they?
No, and some of those programs, like the unlimited feticide, of course, are those haven't even really begun to manifest in the budget. The state has just basically pledged that it's going to, fully support, second and third trimester unregulated feticide with no proof of citizenship. So anybody, any state can prove, send their their employee here to have a birth averted, and save all that money and put it on the Colorado taxpayers. We haven't even seen the beginning of that bill yet. And then the surgeries, the genital mutilation, and the reality denying surgeries. We're talking, close to $1 million a person is quite possible. Now they say, well, it'll be relatively few people, but there's also no limit on the number of people, or where they come from. Or you can become, if you're looking at $1 million worth of surgery, and all you have to do is become a Colorado citizen and live on the government dole. I don't think we're going to have any shortage of. I don't think we're going to have any shortage of takers. And of course, the oil and gas money, we're leaving that in the ground. I asked Jen Bacon if she'd want to co-sponsor save $24 million, which is what they put towards the boson, talking about special interests, which was putting free a month or so of free mass transit, which of course just encourages the wrong people to take mass transit, and then makes the paying customers not want to ride it. But that was ostensibly to decrease the ozone in Colorado. But when asked like how much ozone it's going to decrease, they had no idea. They had no idea what the metrics were. They had no idea how to create the metrics. So it's not important to them to actually solve the problem. It's important for them to spend the money. So they want to spend the money, and I don't think and they clearly don't care if they solve a problem or not.
Oh, that's such a great point. I think that's so important. And I don't remember who said it. I don't know if it was Thomas Sowell, but somebody said, when you stop viewing the politicians as trying to solve your problem and really just trying to solve their problem, government makes a lot more sense. And their problem, of course, for the politicians, for the majority of them at least, is just getting reelected, is serving their special interests so that they get more campaign donations, they get the kudos and the pat on the back, and they get promoted to higher office. And that's really what so many of these politicians are focused on, in my opinion. It's not about trying to improve the lives of the average Coloradan. If they did that, they would slash the budget another couple $1 billion, and let us have our ability to live our own lives. But of course, that's not what they're there for. But I want to get back to something you said early on, and I really appreciate the that you mentioned this, and that's that it's a rubber stamp of Palooza. Just this idea that all of these. This is something I've been hammering home too. Is like all of these bills, all of this legislation and policies being crafted behind closed doors. Legislators like yourself that were given a very short amount of time, but really, I'm sure the Democratic majority has been working on this for weeks behind the scenes with no public input, working with their special interest cronies and their other government employees, figuring out what they want to do. And then at the very last minute, the public will find out. There are some bills that have been introduced, pre-released, and have been introduced, like your own, which I'd like to talk about. But the majority of it, some of the big stuff, is just going to come out the very last minute. No ability for public input. It's already been signed, sealed, and delivered. Approved by the governor, and they're just going to force it through on Colorado without really going through what should be a democratic process, and it's really a sham.
Well, the Democratic you use those words kind of interchangeable, and if the uh, the Democrat Party is anything but democratic. I think when you actually talk to the people out on the streets, the people are very surprised at what their Democrat representatives, and the Democrat, just the mob, the rule of the demos, the mob rule, to win the battle of democracy, to get democracy out of the way, and so you can just be ruled by elites again. But yeah, rubber stamp of Palooza is these bills. We were waiting. We heard, now we thought the special session was going to fall in October when the third quarter reports come out of lower revenue, and so I wouldn't be surprised if there's not another one in the works because of the projected shortfalls in the budget, just from the actual budget process, not necessarily from HR1. So yeah, they craft these behind closed doors. They put this all together. They crafted the special call, which I don't think is a legitimate call because it's an executive order, and I don't fall under the purview of the governor's executive order, and to eliminate any real ideas and eliminate any real conversation in how we might save money, because the things that are not on the table are things like the governor's hundreds of millions of dollars in green energy spending, green energy being a euphemism, or the Wolf program, or the unlimited feticide, or the genital mutilation surgeries. All of those things, those high dollar items, those are not on the table. And looking through the list, I don't really see any attempt. So I think they had to have it this early. I do anticipate they will try to get stuff on the ballot, which would have to be done by September, and they will try to, I suspect there will be if it's not on the list already, try to get rid of Tabor to try to really get home an idea that to the people of Colorado, that the only reason that we can't balance the budget is because of the Tabor refunds. And of course, the reason they want to get rid of Tabor is the taxpayer Bill of Rights. They want to get rid of your taxpayer Bill of Rights because they want to be able to raise taxes on you without limit. And the only reason we're having this special session is because they are restricted. They are not. They would prefer to just solve this by adding another tax and saying, well, they would say, well, it's only 2% more, so we'll just add 2% to everybody's taxes and it's no problem. But when you say to the government, you say, well, it's only 2%, you should just knock 2% out of the budget, then there's weeping and gnashing of teeth out in the darkness. And so, yeah, I think that maybe that answers your question. I'm not sure.
Oh, definitely. No, I really appreciate it. And like I said, I appreciate your perspective. It's so refreshing to have somebody in the legislature who's willing to tell it like it is and not hold back. I'm very thankful that you're down there, Representative deGraaf. And I'm very curious about your bill that you have here. You've introduced a bill to increase transparency and integrity in Colorado's prescription drug market. So, what can you tell us about this?
Well, I think this one goes back to a lot of unintended consequences when you have a 340B program, medical program that creates about a 250%, the way I see it, a 250% window for shenanigans and a window, because the 340B program requires that like some pharmacies, some hospitals receive their medication at a 60% discount. So the government comes in and says, well, we're a big buyer, or we are going to require, we're just going to go in and with our good intentions and require you to give your medicine to these groups at a 60% discount. Well, the way to do that is to mark up all of your medications by 250%. So if you have a $40 medication and everything that goes into it, what the government would like to do is say, well, we're going to buy it for $10, right? We're going to buy it for $24 or $16. It would be $16. We're going to buy it for $16. We're going to buy your $40 medicine for $16. Well, that may or may not be sustainable. So the mathematically easy way to do this is just to mark everything up 250%. So if you have a $40 drug, you have to sell it for $100. And the reason you sell it for $100 is so when the government knocks off 60%, you're selling it for $40. But that means you, Brandon, you go into the pharmacy and they'd say, well, it costs you $100. Well, now you can't afford it, so you have to do insurance, and then so the insurance, then they get together, and then they get big policies, and they say, well, now we're a big entity and we want to negotiate your price. So really, when you're all these things with insurance are just you're paying somebody thousands of dollars a month to have a big building, lots of staff, and to negotiate your payment to somewhere closer to what the government is paying in Medicare and TRICARE and all the other single payer entities. So that and then why is that? Well, because Medicare requires a certain amount of unfunded, like the hospital in Denver, $24 million worth of unreimbursed care. Illegal aliens. Or undocumented foreign nationals is the official term, I think. So Medicare does the same thing. It says, well, we're going to pay only 20% on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar. And I've seen this time after time, TRICARE, Medicare, and then so they have to charge 500% more. So if they're only going to get paid 1/5, they have to charge 5 times more. And then so you have this big window. Well, now you have this unreimbursed care. And then you have the 340B, and you have all of these markets and these things going on, trying to manipulate and save this money, just trying to, and the 340B is intended to prop up these hospitals that are providing care for, unfunded care, but it's turning out to be the opposite. They're just using there's hospitals that are using the profit from the 340B savings to buy out the other hospitals that don't have the 340B pricing, and they're providing less community service medical and making more profit. So this program that's supposed to actually help the what you would consider the charity type hospitals is being used to undermine the hospitals that are buy out and replace those. So anyways, there's been a lot of work in this field. The PBMs that manipulate, they work in this space basically with this 250% window. just telling that, they already have data, and so you're paying for that. You're paying for a medication. So you as an employer, you should be able to see what the data is. Like, if you can look at a cereal box and you can see generalized ingredients and you can know what you're buying. This is saying, hey, the employer, the person who's paying for the plan, they should have the ability to know what they're buying and how much they're paying for. It also, within the limits of federally approved, allows outsourcing for other medications. Where Trump has signed some stuff to, the implementation is a little iffy on most favored nation, where these other nations, these socialist nations, just said, well, we're only going to pay this much, and so the United States is actually paying a premium for these medications, and then they're being sold in other countries for less, and it would allow those medications to come back in. Now, that's kind of silly, but it should ultimately right the market, because then there's not a benefit. So it'd be us saying, Colorado just saying what the other countries are saying, is that we're going to pay this lesser price for the medication, and then something that really shouldn't be an issue is it just tells the PBMs that they can't intentionally mislead somebody. And of course, intentionally misleading is deception for personal gain. So that would be a deceptive trade practice. So it doesn't seem that you would actually have to define a deceptive trade practice. But you had people, you had employers looking at different programs, and you'd have some unscrupulous players, and of course they're not all. I mean, there's a lot of really good ones out there, and but they would tell people that's like, oh, that's illegal, or that's dangerous, or that's this or that, and these are licensed entities. They're licensed by the state. That's a whole other issue. I'm not necessarily in favor of that, but we've created these. You've got a whole series of problems that are stacked like those little Russian dolls. And that they need to tell the truth, that they, if somebody asks somebody who is, the state, in this sense, the state is endorsing this person in this role as an expert, and you should be able to trust the word of an expert, not to tell you a lie. So we already have deceptive trade practices, but the way the wording is, you actually have to say, oh, by the way, you cannot knowingly mislead somebody in order to deceive them, and you have to define, so that's defined in the bill. So the people these people licensed by the state can't be lying for their profit.
Definitely makes sense, and I'm really glad
on that.
Yeah, go for it.
Just some of these programs, when we looked at for El Paso County, savings of about $7.8 million. A couple of drugs saving $4 million, and the projection, some of these programs, these abilities would save the state about $184 million per year, without changing, not cutting coverage, not cutting benefits, not cutting anything. Just being able to use alternate sourcing methods could save Colorado upwards of $184 million per year.
Sounds like a no-brainer. Sounds like a great idea to save the state some money, to provide better prices. I mean, and I'm glad you're, talking about the healthcare system, the medical care system, whatever you want to call it, because there's so many examples out there of how government meddling and government interference in this space, in this healthcare marketplace, has totally distorted everything. Like your example with the prescription drugs. I mean, it's something that a lot of people, I think, don't realize, but they need to. That when politicians, when the state, when the government really gets involved and interferes in these markets, they create these distortions, and they create all these effects that are intended or not, causing prices to increase, the quality of service to decrease, and making it so complicated. I mean, we should be having our medical care the same way we have our food, where you have a relatively free market, it could be a little freer, but, a free market with competitors and choices and pricing and this and that, and we get the government out of the way, and then insurance would definitely change a lot that way. So really appreciate it, Representative deGraaf. What are some final thoughts here on the special session?
Well, on that, I'd say it's not a free market; it's a FUBAR market, right? So it's fouled up beyond anything recognizable. It's people will say, well, the free market has failed, so we need the government to step in. And the one thing that's whether it's intentional or not. If the outcome is obvious, the intent is inferred. So I don't think these. I don't think these. A lot of these things, I think, like the surgeries, the feticide, those are all geared towards bankrupting our insurance, and because then that leaves the single payer healthcare, which is a whole other. Which was the bill. The study that they were going to do, the committee of predetermined outcomes. So as far as closing statements, the people of Colorado need to know that this government is being done to them, not for them. It's being done on their backs. It's not done with their interest in mind. It's done with the Democrat Party's ideology in mind. And I don't know that that's necessarily the ideology of all of the Democrats in the state, because they are often very surprised to find out what their legislators are voting for. But this is why we need to have people get involved in the caucus and assembly process, because you need to be talking to politicians that are willing to go down and talk to the voters, not pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, the equivalent of $100,000 per hour, to not talk to the people that they're going to represent. Right now, we have a government that is largely beholden to special interest. And the reason that it's beholden to special interest is because the citizens of Colorado have stepped out. Vigilance is the price of liberty. Slavery is the price of apathy. The Coloradans have been apathetic. I know I was. So I'm pointing my fingers I'm pointing mostly at myself. I mean, I don't want to be involved in politics. But we have to get involved. We have to overcome this ideology. We have to say we actually care, and what's happening in the future of Colorado matters. When the future of Colorado, when the future of our children matters more than sports scores and pop culture, then we'll see things start to change.
Well said, sir. I appreciate it. I look forward to hearing more from you about the special session, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. And yeah, can't agree more. I got to echo that sentiment. First rule of politics, folks, is show up. First rule
Oh,
is
wow.
just show up. So show up, get involved, and really encourage anybody out there to go down to the state capitol, remote testimony, live stream it on the Colorado channel, whatever you can do. At least follow along here on social media with Free State Colorado and Representative deGraaf's great X account. So awesome. Well, really appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
Awesome. See you, Brandon.